Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. We're going to do Pro Wrestling Awards for 2024. We're not doing the TCC Pro Wrestling Awards. Instead, we're going to do an Around the Horn Pro Wrestling Awards for 2024. So we're going to go to various sites and go through who they have as Promo of the Year, Match of the Year, etc. So we got the New York Post, we got ESPN, we got Sports Illustrated, and we got a couple of other ones that I'm going to have to search for. So, you ready to go? Let's evaluate other people's wrestling awards for the year. Let's start with the New York Post. For Men's Wrestler of the Year, they have Cody Rhodes. A solid pick for Men's Wrestler of the Year. I'm not sure you can even make an argument for anybody other than Cody. I mean, he won the title at WrestleMania, has won every match since. He's a draw. So, I mean, I know he's not a draw on TV because he doesn't really wrestle that often. But you can't really go wrong with Cody Rhodes being the Wrestler of the Year. I mean, it is what it is. Women's Wrestler of the Year, New York Post has Toni Storm. I think she was in the most important women's storyline of the year, so I suppose that's fair. Tag Team of the Year, they have the Young Bucks, which is dumb. Like, the Young Bucks have been off TV for a long time. How are they the Tag Team of the Year? I guess they were involved with the match with Sting, but that was in like March of 2024. They haven't done anything major since. Seems unfair to me. Match of the Year, Bryan Danielson versus Will Ospreay. Look, Match of the Year is my weak point because it would require me to remember a lot of wrestling matches, but I actually remember liking Cody Rhodes and AJ Styles at Backlash more than I liked Danielson versus Will Ospreay, but that's just me. Faction of the Year, The Judgment Day. No. Be for real. Get out of here. Story of the Year, Cody Rhodes finishes the story at WrestleMania 40. Okay. I guess that means that the company peaked in March. I don't know about that. Promo of the Year, Drew McIntyre and CM Punk's exchange during the March 25th episode of Raw. I don't remember that at all. Okay. Pay-per-view of the Year, WrestleMania 40. WrestleMania 40 as the pay-per-view of the year. I think it's a strong contender. And I think it's a fair decision to go with WrestleMania 40. You know, it's clearly the New York Post is seemingly going with things that are mainstream. You're not really, digging too deep. Manager of the Year, Paul Heyman. Well, okay, there hasn't been a lot of premier managers going on right now. Women's Breakout Star of the Year, Mariah May. I agree with that. Men's Breakout Star of the Year, Braun Breaker. I agree with that too. Return of the Year, The Rock on Raw Day 1. Okay, sure. I can go with that. OMG Moment of the Year, Liv Morgan kisses Dominic at SummerSlam. That was pretty shocking and it was pretty hilarious. I don't know if I would have it as the OMG Moment of the Year because I don't know what that means. Oh my God, Moment of the Year. Okay, I guess because it did cement Dominic Mysterio as one of the scumbags of the millennium. So yeah, sure. Biggest story of the year, the Vince McMahon sexual assault allegations. All right, so New York Post, it was fair. I can't complain too much. Wasn't thrilled about some of the decisions that they made, especially Tag Team of the Year. Wasn't a big fan of that, but okay. Sports Illustrated, they have a list. Men's Wrestler of the Year, Cody Rhodes. All right, fair enough. Women's Wrestler of the Year, Toni Storm. All right, again, fair enough. Breakout Star of the Year, Jacob Fatu. Jacob Fatu. Over Braun Breaker, I'm not sure I'm willing to go there. Now, I see why you would pick Jacob Fatu because he did come out of nowhere and he's one of the most over guys on the roster without having matches. But to me, Braun Breaker has got to be the Breakout Star of the Year. Match of the Year, Bryan Danielson versus Will Ospreay. Ooh, everybody's in love with that. Show of the Year, WrestleMania 40. Okay. Story of the Year, The Bloodline Saga. I guess that's fair. Rivalry of the year, Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk. Wouldn't that be story of the year? Because CM Punk and Drew McIntyre was a rivalry, it was also a story. So it was the rivalry of the year without being the story of the year. What's the difference? Whatever. Heel turn of the year, Xavier and Kofi turn on Big E. Okay, that's fair. Best on the mic, Drew McIntyre. Tag team of the year, Fraxium. That would be Nathan Frazier and Axiom, which I think is a much better choice than the Young Bucks. An infinitely better choice than the Young Bucks. The Young Bucks, I don't see how they became tag team of the year. ESPN Pro Wrestling Awards for 2024. Women's Wrestler of the Year, Roxanne Perez and Toni Storm as a tie. Okay, look, Roxanne Perez has had a hell of a year. I think she's been champion pretty much this whole year. Her character work has not been strong enough for me to put her on the same level as Toni Storm. I appreciate it, but I would have to say Toni Storm should have this one without question. Men's Wrestler of the Year, Gunther. Wow. Gunther as the Men's Wrestler of the Year. ESPN got their thinking caps on. This is a big brain decision they got here, brother. I don't know about this one, bro. I don't know. I guess Gunther he's excellent between the ropes, but he's had a shoddy character. It's been very shoddy. Tag Team of the Year, Fraxium, Nathan Frazier and Axiom. I agree with that. Debut Wrestler of the Year, Jacob Fatu. Okay, they specified debut. And I don't think Brian Breaker counts as a debut because he was on NXT first. Breakthrough Wrestler of the Year, Swerve Strickland. This is a good one. I do think that Swerve did have a banner year. He had a really good year. It's fair. It's a fair, maybe I would have still said Brian Breaker, but Swerve Strickland, I can't disagree with that. Best promo, Drew McIntyre. I probably would debate that, but he was pretty strong throughout the year in terms of promo. Match of the year, Will Ospreay versus Bryan Danielson. It's been pretty consistent that this has been the match of the year amongst the wrestling intelligentsia. The best PLE pay-per-view, WrestleMania 40. Again, been pretty consistent so far. And best feud or storyline, CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. All right, so Punk and McIntyre are getting a lot of flowers for their rivalry and their bunch of matches that they had, a couple of matches that they had. The strap match was probably the weakest match that they ended up having, but even that was wrapped around a storyline that was still pretty damn good. So McIntyre and Punk as the rivalry of the year, I'm willing to give it to them because that excellent Hell in a Cell match really put it over the line for me and so many other people. Now, Sports Illustrated did their top 10 men's matches of the year 2024. Number 1, Will Ospreay versus Bryan Danielson at Wrestle Dynasty. Number 2, Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk at Hell in a Cell. Number 3, Will Ospreay versus Swerve Strickland at Forbidden Door. Number 4, Will Ospreay versus MJF on Dynamite. Get real. Okay. Number 5, Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania 40. So the number 1 WWE match was Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns. Did people not watch that match? It had all those goddamn run-ins? No, I'm sorry. WrestleMania 40, Roman Reigns versus Cody was a great show. It was not a great match. And also, there's too much Will Ospreay on this list. We're not even done with the Will Ospreay. Number 6, Bryan Danielson versus Zack Sabre Jr. at the New Beginning in Osaka. And number 7, Will Ospreay versus Konosuke Takeshita at Revolution. I think that was probably one of the better matches that was had this year for sure. Number 8, Kazuchika Okada versus Bryan Danielson at Wrestle Kingdom. Number 9, Mike Bailey versus Konosuke Takeshita at Forged in Excellence. And number 10, Will Ospreay versus Darby Allin on Dynamite Holiday Bash. There is a hell of a lot of Will Ospreay on this list. I'm begging you to watch something else. Begging you to watch. Look, I get it. Will Ospreay is incredibly athletic, and that's his strong suit. But what about psychology? What about the story? What about crowd emotions? All of that stuff is, to me, more important than how many flips you can do in a match or how many counters you can throw in. So for me, I'm looking at this list and I see only one WWE match, and that being Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania 40. And, well, two, because you have Drew McIntyre and CM Punk at Hell in a Cell. What happened to Cody Rhodes versus AJ Styles, which I think is one of the best WWE main events all year? I certainly think it was better than Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns. I certainly think it was better than most of the Will Ospreay matches on this list. I don't know if that was my favorite match all year, Cody Rhodes versus AJ Styles, but it was certainly more memorable and better than most of these random Will Ospreay matches, like his match with MJF or that match with Darby Allin. I mean, come on. You got to stop being a mark for spots. You got to. So, Sports Illustrated's top 10 women's matches of 2024. This is going to get interesting, folks. Mercedes Moné versus Hazuki at Strong Style Evolved is number 1. No. I watched this match. I've seen this match. No. Okay, whatever. Number 2, Chris Statlander versus Willow Nightingale at All Out. Okay. Number 3, Mayu Iwatani versus Momo Watanabe at Historic X Over 2. I've never seen that. Don't know anything about it. 4, Mercedes Moné versus Willow Nightingale at Double or Nothing. Okay. Number 5, Mariah May versus Toni Storm at All In. Okay. Number 6, Mercedes Moné versus Chris Statlander at Full Gear. All right. Number 7, Bayley versus Io Sky at WrestleMania 40. Number 8, Io Sky versus Utami Hayashishita at Summer Destiny. Number 9, Masha Slamovich versus Jordan Grace at Bound for Glory. Number 10, Women's Iron Survivor match at Deadline. This will be the 5-woman NXT match. Well, here is the issue. Some of these matches I don't remember. Some of them I did not actually see. For my money, the best women's match I've seen was Jordan Grace versus Masha Slamovich at Bound for Glory. That was the best women's match of the year, as far as I'm concerned. Now, Mercedes versus Chris Statlander at the most recent AEW pay-per-view, which was World's End, was quite good. But for me, Masha Slamovich versus Jordan Grace, their first match, was the best women's match of the year. And the fact that their second match is not even on this list at all is problematic. All right? So, I get it. There's a lot of Mercedes on here. And people like Mercedes in between the ropes. But I think that this stuff is a little bit overrated. A little bit. Now, her match with Chris Statlander was very good. The match she had with Willow was very good. I'm not sure if I'm willing to put Mariah May and Toni Storm over some of Mercedes versus Chris Statlander, but I'm certainly not putting it over Masha Slamovich versus Jordan Grace. That was the best women's match of the year, period, bar none. All right, we got comicbook.com. They have the best female wrestler of the year is Rhea Ripley. Now, I'm not thrilled with this choice because Rhea Ripley had not done a lot. She's been the most prominently featured woman, but in terms of matches, promos, she hasn't been there enough. You know, I think Toni Storm did more than Rhea Ripley this year. I don't think it's fair to give it to Rhea. It is what it is. Now, comicbook.com also chose Drew McIntyre as their best male wrestler of the year. And I think it's been a banner year for Drew McIntyre. He had a really good year. Should he be the male wrestler of the year? I think it's less ridiculous than Gunther, but I think it's ridiculous all the same. I don't know if we make Drew McIntyre the best male wrestler of the year. I'm not sure it fits. But there's an argument to be made there that he should be the best male wrestler of the year due to the work ethic he put in with CM Punk and how excellent he's been on the microphone and in the ring. To be quite honest, the people underrate how great Drew has been in the ring this year. So you can make a legitimate argument for Drew. It's hard for me to make because the guy only had one story all year, right? And it's been the feud with CM Punk. And I'm not sure if you just take a guy for one story and say that he had, the best year. No, even though I know that's what we're doing with Toni Storm, is we're looking at one story that she did and saying, well, she's the best of the year. But the women's divisions across all of wrestling don't have very deep rosters and a lot of stories going on. So, but I think Drew is a legitimate choice. It's a competent choice, I suppose. So we got to go to divadirt.com. This is a women's wrestling fan site, and they're going to do their 2024 year-end women's wrestling fan awards. They got over 41,000 votes, which is more than the Wrestling Observer newsletter. All right, so Diva Dirt, their feud of the year. Mariah May versus Toni Storm. Okay, that's believable. Again, was the best feud for the women all year. Makes sense. They got 46%. The runner-up was Liv Morgan versus Rhea Ripley at 31%. Best gimmick, Chelsea Green with 45%. The runner-up was Toni Storm with 36%. That's an interesting decision. I don't see how one can decide that Chelsea Green was a better gimmick than Timeless Toni. And I don't know, I understand that some people didn't like Timeless Toni, but Chelsea Green, she's a strong contender, though. I'm not going to say that Chelsea Green is whack or anything like that, but I'm not sure if I would have picked Chelsea Green over Toni Storm as the best gimmick. Best finisher, Sol Ruka's Soul Snatcher, 50%. The runner-up was actually Tatum Paxley's Psycho Trap, which I didn't know that was the name of her finisher. I didn't know her finisher had a name. But the Soul Snatcher is easy. Yeah, that's number one. Best promo, the winner, Bayley and Damage Control. Damage Control turns on Bayley with 38%. The runner-up was Liv Morgan, Rhea Ripley, and Dominic Mysterio, with Dom breaks Liv's heart. Is that when he faked like he hated her and he didn't want her around? They wouldn't give him credit for the chicken tendies promo because that's a man. But that chicken tendies promo was great. But Bayley and Damage Control, this is where we found out that Bayley magically spoke Japanese, and that get real, get bent on that one. Okay. Best return / surprise. The winner was Naomi returns to WWE in the Royal Rumble with 36%. The runner-up was Jordynne Grace in the WWE's Royal Rumble with 17%. I'm sorry. Naomi, I think everybody knew she was going to be there. I don't think that was the best surprise or best return. Jordynne Grace was legitimately a surprise. And I don't think anybody saw it coming. It was a bigger surprise when she showed up on NXT. And I think that should have won. When she showed up on NXT to challenge Roxanne Perez, that should have been the best surprise. Legit. Best tag team or stable. The winner is Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill with 35%. The runner-up, or the Meta Girls, was Jakara Jackson and Lash Legend with 26%. I think it's pretty easy to have the women's be the Bianca and Jade be the best tag team. It's like what other tag teams stayed together throughout the year. Pretty much everybody else fell apart, or they were thrown together just to wrestle Bianca and Jade. They got best ring gear, best face. Oh, best face. Okay, so I thought they meant like literally their face. That's me being stupid. That was very low IQ. I'm so sorry because I was about to diss Diva Dirt for like, why are you concerned with their makeup? Because they have best ring gear. And so I thought like after best ring gear, it was best face. I'm not even going to discuss best ring gear because who cares? But best face, they got Naomi with 40%. And the runner-up is Bianca Belair with 19%. Ooh. Naomi as the best female face in wrestling. Willow has to be number one, right? I mean, Willow is one of the strongest baby faces in women's wrestling. I mean, she's just so pure and innocent. I love Willow Nightingale. I think that she should be considered the best babyface. She should at least got runner-up. Best heel, Nia Jax with 39%. Liv Morgan with 18%. Best heel, Nia Jax. I guess you got to pick somebody. I wouldn't have picked Nia Jax. I don't want Nia Jax to win anything. So I guess you have to pick somebody, I suppose. So I skipped a bunch of these. Let's get to some of the ones I thought were more interesting. The women's breakout star of the year. The winner is Mariah May with 42%. The runner-up is Lash Legend with 26%. I think Mariah May becoming the women's breakout star is appropriate. I think the heel turn that they did with her and Toni Storm was next level. That was great. So I see why she would be the breakout star. Lash Legend, she's most improved. If we had a most improved category, Lash Legend would win it. But this is breakout star. And WWE has done a terrible job of letting the girls actually break out. So it's easy to go to AEW with that one. Match of the year. So women's match of the year, they have Io Sky versus Bayley. WWE's women's title match at WrestleMania 40. The runner-up is Mercedes Moné versus Chris Statlander for the TBS title at Full Gear. So Io Sky versus Bayley, according to women's wrestling fans, is the best women's match of the year. I don't know if I've seen that match since it happened. So I cannot confirm or deny, but I will say I remain steadfast that Masha Slamovich versus Jordynne Grace at Bound for Glory is the best women's match that has taken place on the soil of the United States in the year of our Lord 2024. Okay? Bar none. All right? Bar none. So clearly the TNA girls are not getting all the love they should get. So the women's wrestler of the year, according to Diva Dirt, is Liv Morgan with 31%. The runner-up is Roxanne Perez at 20%. Liv Morgan being the women's wrestler of the year, she had a strong year. I guess you can make an argument for Liv. I still would say Tony, but I can see why you would pick Liv. Liv has been a world champion for a long time this year, and that might count for something in your corner of the world. You might decide that her being champion all this time boosts her candidacy for being women's wrestler of the year. But I don't think that Liv Morgan is the women's wrestler of the year. I think it's easily Toni Storm. And maybe even Jordynne Grace. She's in the conversation too, spearheading the NXT TNA partnership. I mean, she did quite a bit. She broke down a pretty big barrier there that probably should be something that she gets more credit for. So that's pretty much all the mainstream awards that I could find. I thought it was weird that Sports Illustrated, if I remember correctly, did not have Will Ospreay as wrestler of the year, male wrestler of the year, but he got like 6 of their favorite matches of this year. So it's like, oh, he's clearly the best in-ring performer, but he's not the best wrestler of the year. And it's the same for when you say the women's of the year. They picked Toni Storm, but when you look at who their favorite wrestler it was Mercedes. So I think it should kind of match that. If you like more of that person's matches and stories or whatever of that year, then you should clearly pick them to be the best wrestler of the year. So how you have a top 10 list that's populated with like half the list is Will Ospreay, and then he's not your wrestler of the year. And you have the women's matches, and it's like 4 out of the 6 is Mercedes Moné, and including being number 1. And then she's not your female wrestler or women's wrestler of the year. So it's I guess that depends on how strong the character work is. And the character work is very strong with Toni Storm. But I would think that Mercedes would be number 1 if you look at the amount of matches that she has listed as people's favorite matches. Same thing with Will Ospreay. I would imagine Will Ospreay is number one. But I wouldn't go that route. I think the one true crime here, there's a couple of crimes, is ESPN's list with Gunther being the men's wrestler of the year. That is an absolute abortion. How you can manage to make that mistake, I don't know. Look, there really is only like 4 options. All right, Cody, because he main evented WrestleMania twice this year. He main evented both WrestleManias this year. He's been world champion for several months. He's been in top feuds pretty much all year. Had a great match with AJ Styles. You know, had a couple of other really great matches on other shows, but the AJ Styles one really stands out to me. I know that he kind of fluttered out near the end of the year, but he's a top option. Will Ospreay is a candidate due to his in-ring work, mostly. Swerve Strickland was a great breakthrough star for AEW. He is one, I know he lost the title earlier in the year, but he had, you know, some really strong performances throughout 2024. And Drew McIntyre is a very strong performer throughout 2024. Excellent feud with CM Punk. And I guess you could say CM Punk was a good option too, but he spent a lot of his time hurt this year or off. How you managed to get as far as Gunther, I have no idea. I just don't know how you get to Gunther. Another crime is the New York Post picking the Young Bucks as Tag Team of the Year. What a crime. Clearly, it should be Axiom or Nathan Frazer. Look, this is a very weak division because both WWE and AEW took a dump on their tag team divisions this year. As a matter of fact, I completely forgot who the tag team champions were and currently are for AEW. And WWE, they consistently put their tag team titles on people who either don't defend it or they're not over and nobody cares about them. The only team that has consistently had really good matches and stories and has been interesting has been Nathan Frazer and Axiom. And that's on the main stage. If you take into account TNA, then I guess you could still say Axiom because outside of the Hardys, it's been Tubalard, Eddie Edwards, and grizzled old fucktard Brian Myers. And no, I'm not ever going to give them credit for anything. So I think it's been easy, a cruise for an Axiom and Nathan Frazer. And maybe they got points taken away because it's NXT. But they definitely deserved that. Roxanne Perez getting a co-spot with Toni Storm for ESPN is very interesting. I already said that it probably shouldn't have happened due to Roxanne Perez not being a strong promo. But I think other people just outperformed her as well. So I think Toni Storm should have that one alone. Let's look at any other obvious, ridiculous choices that were made. I don't see any other obvious, ridiculous choices other than those. So I can disagree with a lot of these decisions, but ultimately I'm not going to sit down and come up with a list of my own because that would require me to do way more research than I want to do. And most of these matches I don't watch more than once. So when I don't watch things more but one time, it's hard for me to say that there's something better. Plus, better and worse, these things are subjective. For me, however, I look at things that are pretty significant. And for me, the women's match of the year is clearly Slamovich versus Grace. It was the most significant women's match that I saw this year. There have been some pretty good women's matches in AEW, mostly due to Mercedes up in the work rate of the promotion. Hell, some of the times even the tag team championship matches between Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair have been pretty good, especially some of the matches with Damage Control. And there were no women's tag team matches listed at all. So it is what it is. I can't really complain too much. But I think the real crime was the Gunther thing and the Young Bucks thing. That was just absolutely ridiculous. And I understand tag teams is weak, and both companies have dropped the ball on their tag team divisions, but that's still no excuse to go with the Young Bucks. That is no excuse to go to the Young Bucks. I would rather you have picked the NWA tag team champions than have picked the Young Bucks. I'm not going to hold you up. I'm not gonna hold you up. Anyway, what did you guys think of these awards, and do you have awards of your own? If you do, let me know in the comment section below. If you don't, just tell me what you think about these. Peace out.